Well, good afternoon or good morning, depending on where you're at. My name is Cyndy McDonald, and I want to welcome you to today's Friday Forum. We have a special guest and a special topic for you. I am the host of the Friday Forums. I'm an educator, an entrepreneur, and now I'm a podcaster and doing webinars and videos with people who are experts in areas that you care about. So subject matter experts in topics that you want to learn more about. So as you're joining us today, one of the things that I'd like to do is have you share your name and your location. And also today we're talking about AI. We just did a survey. We're going to share you the results. It was very interesting. Buzz and Tom are going to share all this information with you. So as you're joining, put in your name, location on a scale of 1 to 5, 1 being like, give me my paper and pen, please. I don't want to do AI. To 5, like I live, eat, and breathe AI. Put where you fall in terms of your comfort level with AI. So put it in the chat. We should be able to have everybody put the chat in, and I see Jagisha, I see Susan. So good to see everybody. I had such a wonderful email this morning. I had somebody said, "Oh, it's so nice to see you in my email box. I've missed you." Well, dear listeners, I've missed you too. So, Tom and Buzz, you can see we're having people from just all over Texas, North Carolina, Georgia, DC, just all these different places and the different levels. So thank you for being here today. And I want to have Tom and Buzz introduce themselves, give them a little bit of background so you know where they're coming from and where their expertise is. Talking about AI in our industry, it's something we all think about and wonder about, and we're going to give you a lot more information so that you know you're not alone. And you can see on the chat you're not alone either. So, Tom, tell us a little bit more about yourself and how
Okay.
did you become interested in this?
Cyndy, I've been doing technology transfer, company transformations for the last 10, 15 years. My whole background's in the technology space. So that's my background. But I started talking to my sister a year ago. She's been in the education space as a teacher, an educator, and a college advisor for 20 years. And I realized there was a big opportunity here. A big opportunity to help college advisors and an even bigger opportunity to help students and contribute to the education space. So I got excited about it. That's sort of how I got into this space.
And your sister is on the call here too
She's on the
today.
call. Hey,
Yeah.
Francis. You
Yeah.
can't say anything, but good to see you.
Buzz, what about you? How did you get connected to all of this?
Yeah, I have a background in leadership and in software. And so I've wanted to build software that makes a meaningful impact on people and how we see each other. I think AI is an amazing transformation tool in how we relate to one another. And that's how I partnered with Tom is I really want to use AI to further relationships. And I think with students, I have a passion for students as they develop. My wife's a mental health counselor. So I think really I care a lot about how we use AI to help people grow in their earliest development phases.
And I think that's really key. And this is where having expertise is so important because we're experts in education and counseling and students and college. We are not experts in AI. So this is so valuable that you've turned your attention to this. So, and you can see, I love seeing all the comments in the chat, and it looks like most people are at a 2, 3, maybe 4. Maya says 3, 4. So, any thoughts or things for either one of you as you're seeing these numbers in the chats?
That looks consistent with the survey, and I'm really pleased to see it. It looks like I see some 4s and 5s in here. That's great. You'll see why, but I'm really happy to see that. But everyone's at different places, so it doesn't matter where you are. It sort of matters it's the steps you're taking to take advantage of this right now.
Right. So well, let's show them what the survey results were.
Okay. So let me start here, take a few minutes, and we said we were going to show the survey results. So we're going to hit the highlights of them. So let me.
And this
click on this.
presentation will be available on my website as well. So you'll get links in the show notes as well.
Okay, great. So we had over 100 people take the survey, and they answered questions, and they answered multiple choice questions, and they also answered some fill-in questions. And so we have a lot of insights from the fill-in questions. Almost 90% of the people provided commentary on their actual use of AI, and that was incredibly insightful. We're very grateful for that. So thank you everyone for that. The questionnaire broke the responses into those that were using AI regularly or have it more integrated, so heavier users. And it had a second group broke it into a second group of those that are experimenting, and then those that were non-users. And so you can see the AI is being used by college advisors regularly. Over 90% of the people are using it. Almost 2/3 are using it regularly or at a pretty active level. A small percentage are not using it. Those people were, you can see from the comments, are pretty definitive that they don't really intend to use it. So, but that's a good understanding. We're going to give some more context on that in a moment. If you recall, the first two questions on the survey were around ethical concerns for business use and ethical concerns for how advisors were using this to work with their students. And you can see there are broad concerns around integrity and student impact. Integrity being the quality and accuracy of the data, as well as behavioral integrity, professional integrity. It says vendor data handling, but I'm going to call it vendor, integrity. And as well on the student side, substantial concerns around students losing their voice, leaning too much on AI and not developing appropriate skills. So those are broadly shared concerns. Easy to understand. I know there are topics at the upcoming IECA conference, and there are topics on this at the HECA conference as well. But despite concerns, there's still pretty heavy and broad use of AI amongst college advisors. And this is sort of how it breaks down in some key areas. I have a chart on the left for AI use in business types of applications, and then the chart on the right is the more student-facing use of AI. Now, we've broken this into two groups that I referenced up front. The green bars are the more active users. So this is someone that's using this daily or regularly or weekly, versus the experimenters are more trying it or maybe using it less frequently. So that's how these two colors vary. But what you can see, the actual ways that people are using AI are very similar. College advisors are using it for drafting communications, and they're using it for college list research and summarization. Those are the 1 and 2 uses. They're also using it for meeting prep and notes. So those are 1, 2, and 3. And then the other applications tend to drop down. There are broader application use, but they tend to drop down a fair amount. You can see the use of it for strategic planning, for that brainstorming is a lot of that student brainstorming, not really heavily used in automation of the practice yet. So that's an interesting note. On student-facing side, the primary use is college list planning, where you see the green bar there, high, helping students explore. That's around still research, but it can be around summer job planning or career planning, things like that. So not far off of college research, but heavily used for research and by the advanced users around meetings and student and parent communications. Now, in addition, we asked people where they might want more from AI. And so, not surprisingly, what we saw is they want more help in things they're currently doing with AI, more help around college lists, more help around meeting notes and meeting prep and follow-up notes, parent communications. Increasingly, they'd like more help around the practice administration and essay coaching. And so that's the overall picture. What we've done is we broke out, because the responses are a little bit different about what people want, by group. And so the active users are here in green on the bottom. The experimenters are in blue, and really the non-users are in gray. And what you can see here, not surprisingly, the active users are really looking for to move forward in their use of AI right now. So they're looking for more advanced prompting, or they're looking for tools tailored to advising, not just the basic tools, or verification of the AI outputs, for example. CRM integration is a common one. The experimenters are more driven, or, sort of blocked a little bit by some hesitancy around the uncertainty, around the trust, or just the lack of time in it. So they're a little less certain and specific about what they're looking for. Again, not surprising on that. So those are the top level takeaways. I will say there's some fascinating comments on the qualitative write-in topics from the survey that provide a lot more insights. We're not going to have time for that now, but we have a written summary of that. So if you're interested in that, we can provide that. But Cyndy, does that sound consistent with what you're hearing from talking to people? I think you're on mute there.
That's an unusual situation for me to be muted.
We don't want that.
I think it's easy for us as practitioners to recognize how beneficial college list building could be, these kinds of processes or things, but it's a little less clear to us, as you can see on the data, that practice administration. We know that it might help us, but we're not really sure. So looking at those tasks for AI assistants, the things and the ones that are most pressing for us, and the most time consuming, the more we can have AI to help us, the better we're going to be able to deliver services. So I think that's spot on. I think the chart on the right, looking at, if you're just starting, if you're not using it, then none of this really applies to you. But if you're experimenting, that is a big factor in terms of, the list here has lack of time to evaluate, use case uncertainty. When do I use it? When do I not? These different things. But active learners, users they're at that next level. And I know we're going to talk about that more. So it shows the different phases and stages you can be in.
Yeah, I think, Cyndy, part of it is you can see in the data, people are using ChatGPT or Gemini or Claude, and that's more of an interactive interface of using AI. And that's where people are today. There are more advanced ways to use AI, and that gets into more of the automation of the practice. And I just don't think it hasn't yet become available enough to make that easy for adoption, because you're not going to automate as easily with a simple command line interface, let's say, with these LLMs today.
Right. That makes sense.
Let's see. There was a longer list. I've sort of got a histogram. So we asked three qualitative questions. Practical use of how people are practically using AI today. We asked what was frustrating them, and then we also asked what are the opportunities. And so I've got a longer histogram of data, but that's a more complicated breakout. But that was also very interesting. I'd say the current actively using advisors understand the opportunity, and I'd use the word eager, that they're eager to be able to apply it more. So that's roughly 2/3 of the users. And by the way, I would also comment, I think the survey reflects what people said. There might be some bias in the users that are not interested in AI. Maybe we don't have enough of that voice in here. So maybe this is overstated a little bit, biased towards the active users. We can't see that, obviously, but I think that's a note I made in the written report that I'd highlight here.
Mm-hmm. I think that's valuable.
Yeah. Cyndy, would it be helpful to jump and cover some context on this now? Are there more? I'm not really watching the questions. Are there questions?
There really aren't any questions right now. If somebody has some questions, now is a great time. You can put them in the question section, or you can put them in the chat. I do want to highlight one thing that we are seeing comments like Deb says, like, I'd love to learn more so I can become more comfortable with AI. Just some of those kinds of perspectives. But I think people are willing and listen to hear what you have to say.
Okay. So we did, thankfully, we got a lot of context. Like I said, almost 90% of the people provided, more description of how they're using AI. And so that allowed us to understand, we used an AI agent for this, but it allowed us to understand where people are in their levels of use. And so the next section, I think you're going to find pretty interesting. It provides context around how people and how college advisors are using AI, but how that compares to other market segments. And so let me show you some of our work we've done there. Now, to do that, I'm going to give you a framework here. So stick with me for just a minute. I'll try to make it just a minute. We've put AI into 5 levels of usage. And so there's a number of studies on AI usage, and this is roughly parallel to them, not exactly parallel, but it's conceptually we thought helpful here. So the 5 levels of usage, and I'm going to talk about it in terms of the tech usage, but more importantly, in terms of the business impact. And this is the business impact people are seeing in all businesses. And I think it's consistent with college advisors. But there's use of generic chat that's just simply interacting with ChatGPT and asking some questions. Obviously, many of you have done that. You can see you save some time from that. There is a level 2, a more sophisticated use of that. And so you could look at Jeffrey Neal's newsletter and use his prompts and have a paragraph or 2 or a half-page prompt, and you can get better results with better prompting, and that saves more time. That's level 2. Level 3, which I know some of you as advisors are starting to use, is the use of folders or projects in ChatGPT or Claude or Google Gemini. And that means you can take your files, a student grade report, some test scores, some meeting transcripts, and you can put them all in one folder. And then you can ask prompts about that. And it can use the context across all of that data. And so that's the level 3 level of usage. And you can see the business impact when you're doing that. And that's not very hard, but when you're doing that, you're typically getting a substantial uplift in terms of productivity and giving yourself more capacity. The level 4 is more integration. I don't see many people doing this yet, but it's allowing the AI not just to answer questions, but to do tasks for you. Go into your file system, move files around, schedule meetings for you, read emails, draft emails, or maybe even send them. And so that generates a lot more capacity through the automation, but there's more time and complexity to set that up. And then the 5th level are these purpose-built tools that are just starting to come out, and they're really built for industry-specific applications. And they unlock transformation types of opportunities in companies and in industries. And a good example of this right now, some of you may know Harvey, used in the legal space. That's really taken hold of the legal space. So I will just spend 30 more seconds on Harvey so you have this context. Harvey is a company that was formed 2 years ago. It's used in the big law firms. Over 50% of law firms have adopted this. A company that just started 3 years ago to 50% penetration. Over 500 corporate legal teams. They've grown to $200 million in 3 years. So it's a demonstration that this AI work, this is not a dot-com bubble. Valuations may be a bubble, but this technology is transformative and here to stay. And you can see it in the business outcomes. Basically, lawyers adopted because they're getting almost 15% more revenue and they're spending less time. So they're making more money and they're spending less time or got more time to go play golf. Being facetious on that, but they are reinvesting some of that time to grow more. And so the firms that are using this are taking advantage of this over, the firms that are not. So it's an example of what's coming, although you haven't seen all those industry-specific applications yet. Harvey's just a first player there. Now, as context, I can share with you, there is thankfully a number of research. You can look at our sources here if you're interested, but the financial advising industry and the legal industry have been looked at fairly thoughtfully. And we used an AI agent to look at your comments and sort of match where college advisors were in using AI to be able to compare how is AI being used for the college advisors versus other known fields. And of course, you see on the left, tech and large consulting firms, the McKinseys, the BCGs of the world, they're much more advanced. Of course, their survival depends on it, and they're front leaning, so you would sort of expect that. But you can see they're a layer above everyone else in terms of where they are in adoption. And then, ironically, over at the right, you can see education is at a lower level. Now, that's not a statement on college admissions use of this or anything like that, but in general, that's where if you read the documentation out there, where the markets are. So I thought that was helpful context. College advisors are not behind, nor are they ahead of the adoption and use of AI. Now, we also looked at, when you look at these surveys, you can see the current level of adoption has happened in 12 to 18 months, which is phenomenally fast for a new technology. And when you look at what's likely happening going forward, just by extrapolating that growth rate, you can see, all the research suggests there will continue to be broad adoption, but also deeper use of AI. Not just more people using it because you're going to hit saturation there, but people are going to be using it more and more to generate productivity. For example, moving from drafting documents to making decisions about situations. Now, you can see the green line is sort of where the financial advising law, college advising is. And so one way to progress is to move up that line. And you're gradually using some AI more. But you can see the blue line is moving up too. And the blue line is going to represent transformation opportunities for many industries. This is not unique to college advisors, for people that jump to use those tools because they're going to be able to get more productivity out of them the way Harvey has done for attorneys. So that's going to happen. And that's more of a step function. And that's what's going to unlock transformation opportunity. But there's also incremental growth that will happen as well. Now, I thought one thing that would be interesting for people, and this is illustrative, we took a look at the value chain for what college advisors do, from setting up a practice, onboarding students, helping them develop and grow, communicating with parents, planning for college, finding the fit, doing some financial aid analysis, eventually getting to applications and getting in. And we've mapped across the 5 levels the current players in this space. And this is not intended to be complete, and it could be off by a little bit. I'll state that up front. But I think it's still informative. And what you can see, and this is the case in college advising, but it's the same case in almost every other industry. Traditional software players, and you can see Mile Learning, College Planner Pro, Counsel More. They're traditional SaaS companies. They have not historically used AI. They're adding AI, and they will move up as they add AI. On the right, College Essay Guy, Prompt. These are people helping students learn to write, either using techniques or actual editors that can work with students. Not at present using AI. They're going to move up, right? But what advisors are doing now, and this is happening in every industry, advisors are using ChatGPT and Claude to complement that. And so they're using that for onboarding and discovery. Tell me more about my student. They're using that for parent communication. I had a meeting. Here's the transcript. Give me a summary. What are my action items? On college planning and fit, this is the #1 usage. They're saying, tell me more about this college. Which colleges would be a good fit for my student, for example? Or give me a report that I can give to the student and parents to explain my thinking. And you see in the essay arena, and I don't know all these players in fairness, but Athena using more AI directly to facilitate college essays. And so you can see people moving up, but then you can also see there will be the more transformative companies that come in at higher levels. And that's where NerdApply is for some of you that are familiar with that, for looking at college fit. That's where Elevated Environments is. I want to be honest. We're not trying to do a plug here, but I think we're going to fit in that space above, and we'll say some more about that later. But we're a natively built AI tool, and we allow that jump in the space we're in. We're not going to be a CRM. We're not going to do everything other people are going to do, but we can complement that, and we can, as a foundation, enable it. Okay. Anyway, I thought that context would be helpful, Cyndy, for people.
Yeah, I think it really is, because we get emails all the time saying, oh, now this new AI has been added to whatever tool or resource we're using. And so we're getting bombarded with that. To have a framework to be able to evaluate, it's like, well, what level is this going to be at, I think is very beneficial. Because just adding AI and just saying I'm adding AI, well, you can see that there's more to it than that. And so we need to be prepared as counselors when we're evaluating tools, resources, solutions to be able to ask these kind of questions. Well, what level of AI are you integrated? Is it agentic AI? Is it, are you just adding it on top, or how is it going to be incorporated? So this is a new framework that I think is very valuable.
Yeah, and it's used. You can reference our survey results if you want, but it's used in other industries. They look at, how many functions are using it, how deeply is it integrated, what's the level of productivity gain. So this is all, it's rapidly developing. And for most of you, you probably know this didn't really come onto the scene until 12 to 18 months ago. So it's sort of coming like a freight train.
Yeah.
But I'm not really watching the questions there. What are you seeing, Cindy? Are people
Um,
any reaction to stuff we're saying? Questions?
oh, so there's one other one that Julie is saying we need to add the college companion, Cindy Allerman's Google Sheets. So yeah, so there are other ones that can be added to this for sure. I know Achieve isn't on here either. So, but this just gives you a framework to be able to ask questions and evaluate and understand that there are different levels that companies can be at. And if, going back to the previous, if they're not moving forward, if they're just kind of staying at one level, then it's not going to help us in our practices as much.
I think one thing, Cindy, it's not so much the definitive statement of where these companies are, it's an appreciation.
Hmm.
This space is changing very rapidly,
Hmm.
and it's not all going to look like incremental change. There are going to be some jumps. You're not going to get one tool to do everything. There's going to be tools in different spaces, and you need a language to be able to assess what's going on and
Hmm.
measure it by business outcomes, as best you can, because that's how other, market segments are going to look at it. But it's going to be
Well,
dynamic for a while.
it is. It totally is. And I think this is the other thing too, having this broken out into different, practice administration. That's the onboarding, the student development, the parent communication and meeting workflows, which is one of those really, really pain points for so many of us. The college planning fit and aid and application essays, it kind of lays out our whole stream. Now, Michelle mentioned that College Planner Pro just acquired
Hmm.
um, Athena. So,
Hmm.
so then they're adding
Yep.
that on and use science, Highlands Ability Battery, and some other assessments are also, yeah. So this is, again, this is not definitive, but having these suggestions help us to be able to put these other resources in there as well.
Hmm.
And Michelle is always bringing up a good point. She says it's not just the business outcomes, though, it's how the tools are built and what happens with the data. And that's where the ethical concerns come in, is where is the data coming? Where is it going? I know when I was building technology, that was the first question I'd always ask is, where did you get this data and what do you do with my data, with my students? So that's another aspect.
Cindy, I think, I'm sort of thinking that would be a good topic for people.
Mhm.
And I think about it a little bit from a practical standpoint for people, not the theoretical, can you use the data and all, but actually the governance in the US and laws have rules around transparency, privacy, contractual rights for elevated. We spent a lot of time understanding that and implementing that. And so in order to make statements that we, for example, are a data processor in the world of privacy language for college advisors who are the data owners and what are called the controllers. So we don't buy, sell, use that data. I guess most vendors would not in this space. But you want to make sure that your vendors have the appropriate agreements, that they certify to that they have what are called data processing addendums with them. And then for you as advisors, you want to protect yourself as well because you have some transparency obligations to your people, your customers, your families and all. And so we could do a session on that because it's very complicated. But at the end of the day, we provide some tools that people that are using us can click on our resources and just get that language to make sure it's in their agreements. But that, from a liability standpoint, is important for advisors. It's important for all companies, but for advisors as well.
Yep. Yep.
Hey, as long as we're on it, Cyndy, I left the sort of the blank section here on student development. You'll see that's an example where the scope of what college advisors can do today is going to change. It's going to expand. And so I've intentionally left that blank and put elevated there because we enable this now. I'm not trying to do a plug for us right at the moment. I'm happy to talk with anybody about what we do, but that's a big opportunity. It's a big opportunity for advisors to expand their practice. It's a big opportunity when you look at all the educational research of where you can have the biggest impact. And it's a big opportunity for students and for families. So we're going to talk more about that down the road.
So Tom, define what you mean by student development.
So when you look at actually the survey, and no surprise, the work that advisors are doing are largely around college fit and how do you get in. There's a little bit of prep work on that about who you are as a student and what classes should you take and some career planning. That tends to be on the light side. But when you look at the research around student development, adolescent development, actually going down to the 7th grade, is the time to have the biggest impact on things like executive function development, social emotional development, social development, leadership, planning skills, academics. So if you want great grades in 10th grade, you can't start in 10th grade. You need to start earlier. And the impacts there can be huge. Now, traditionally, that space not well served is very time consuming under today's models. We believe AI can transform that. And we believe this group of advisors and educators, maybe a broader group over time, but combined with AI tools, that's a transformation opportunity. And that's one space we're excited about.
Good, 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 good.
Let's see. Cyndy, I know we said in the webinar as well, we'd talk about some practical next steps. Happy to go there next, or if people have got questions, happy to stay on this. I'm not able to sort of watch the comments and
I
questions.
think we're ready to go on to, well, we do have some questions. So Jonathan says, do you foresee AI eventually being able to identify admission positioning patterns or predict admissions outcomes more accurately than human consultants?
Well, yes, I do. But I think if you look at Nerd Apply, there's probably examples of where that's almost happening now. And what the AI does, it simply looks at large scale patterns by college, by topic, by student, by region, and it can inform on that. And if you have a record of historical, I'm going to call it behaviors as to what admissions looks like, you're able to apply that to someone applying in the future and say, well, how's that? What's the impact on their likelihood of getting in? Or what do they need to do to change to get in? I'm not saying that's a good thing to do, but it can inform like that. And Nerd Apply is an example of a large data model doing that right now. Yes, I think that will happen. I think there's the rules of the game and how they're played. We were talking about this earlier. I don't know how this plays out. I'm sure admissions offices are using AI to read applications as much as students are using AI, hopefully in the appropriate ways, to help them create their applications. But then you've got, a lot of AI and a lot of AI. And so how that escalates over time is, I don't know if I'm wise enough to have an understanding on that.
I'll jump in just from a technical note as well. I think in terms of AI, the difference is that it's fundamentally a statistical model. So everything that's being pulled out of AI is a likelihood. So the better data we get as the industry develops, the better we can see the flow through of how those applications are processed, of the outcomes of those. I think AI being a statistical model will be able to aggregate, to what you said, Tom, everything and just get more accurate with time. So I think from a technical standpoint, I think we're moving in that direction and we're already pretty close to there to what you said, Tom, as well.
Mhm. And I do want to point out too that Casey and others, it's like there are other things in student development, like survey assessments, Highlands, Strong, use science, but we're kind of just saying how are these companies utilizing AI in their research and their not their research, but their resources. And we're not seeing that as much yet. And I think part of it might be connected to the previous slide, where some of these companies, organizations, industries are slower to adopt and be agile enough to bring these on. So they're there. They just may not be using AI very extensively or even know how to approach it yet.
Cyndy, I know from decades of corporate transformation work, most companies, most people, not just companies, it changes hard and slow, and so it's
Mhm.
almost easier for the newbie or transforming company to come along, and they can get there a little faster. Now they don't have all the assets of the and momentum of the existing businesses, but this is a common situation. It doesn't mean that's necessarily the future. All these companies are going to be looking at how to use AI and technology. So they're just going to change. This is sort of a static picture, and it's going to be, sort of a requirement for everyone to have a language to assess progress and really assess the changes because they're probably going to be coming about 5 times as fast as they've historically come.
Yeah. Well, and the aspect or the example I can use is going back to because we were the very first ones with Guided Path. Then it was my CCA to say, hey, you can take this paper-based version and take this paper-based business that you have and do it on your computer. And when we first started, it wasn't even online. We were sending CDs out, but the minute the website started opening up, that's the thing I said, we got to put this online. And trying to convince people that they could do that took a lot. I mean, and now probably 60, 80%, if we pull everybody, somebody's using something. And so it went from nothing to this is the standard in our industry. And this is going to just amplify
Yeah,
this number exponentially than just having the web being developed. So this demonstrates that.
that might be a good time to sort of switch over to sort of potential next steps for people. Cindy, I don't know if you want to go there
Sounds
next.
good. Yep.
All
No,
right.
sounds good.
We put together a couple slides to try to be just thoughtful around next steps. Um, and so next steps would depend on where you are. And again, there's lots of ways you can move forward. So these are not the only ways, but we're just trying to, if you are at one of these levels, we can offer some suggestions of just where to start. So obviously, if you're not using something like this right now, I know a lot of people feel sort of hostile about this. People probably felt hostile when the automobile came and they were riding horses. And I'm not trying to be critical, but I do want to encourage people to be aware this is a pretty transformative change. And so if you're not trying this, I'd encourage you to try it, is net of it. If you are trying it, I encourage you to try it a little bit more. If you're at an L1 and you're using this, look at building some more sophisticated prompts because it can save you more time. If you're at an L2, look at using folders. Look at using projects and Claude, and it allows you to create portfolios of data that you can go reference and ask things about. If you're at an L3 or above, you can look at other tools. Many of you right now are using meeting note takers. You're getting notes. You're probably putting it in Claude to get a meeting summary or ask questions or tease out action items. You could have that manage a single action item list if you wanted to. Instead of having to do this manually, if you set this up with a Claude Cowork, that's at a level of an L3, it could manage your action item list for you and an action item list for every student. Now, that takes more work to get it set up. That takes some time to learn it and some time to use it. Another step people can take, obviously, it could use a tool. Elevated environments would be one. Would be happy to talk with anybody about it. That allows you to take a bigger step and to not have to be the tech expert to be able to do that. And so we would encourage you to think about these steps and take them. We'll obviously provide the slide, but we can provide some more context on that if that's helpful. I'll come back and touch on that in a moment. I will say I wanted to give an example for what Elevated is doing, just as context for people. So I've showed you where Elevated was positioned in the chart, but a lot of people have mentioned, they want help around meeting prep and meeting summaries and communicating with parents. Elevated is a tool that can listen to your meeting, download your meeting transcripts, and allows you to upload documents, throw in grades, throw in a meeting transcript, throw in your notes, a strong interest survey, a personality assessment, and it builds a living portrait of your student. And not just a living portrait of your student, a living portrait of the parents, and a living portrait of you. And it can then inform you how to better advise that student. We have some default configurations here that give you insights, but you can see there's an agent here on the side. You could ask it. This is an example of a student that was really good in a certain situation. If things were known and details were there, the student was outstanding. And when there was a lack of structure, there was a complete failure. And the parents didn't understand it, and the advisor didn't understand it, how to make things work for the student. But the AI nailed that pattern. In a second, it nailed it. It took only a second because we had all the documents in the data to form the living portrait. But now that advisor has asked our assistant to write emails for the parent, and it adapts to the parent style and the student situation and the advisor style. So it does a phenomenal set of things that if an advisor were using every bit of their intuition on all this, it would all come together, but it does it in seconds. It's an example of what we do. And I'll give you one other example. Since college lists are something everyone is interested in, we've been doing college lists. We're not doing the same thing the other college list builders are doing, where we're using grades and test scores to figure out potential colleges. But we look at the holistic student, their activities, their style, their college preferences, their natural strengths, their interests. And we can look at a qualitative picture of their fit with a college. And we can knock that out. For as many colleges as you want to look at, that research can be done in minutes. Whereas historically that would take hours, if not days, to do that work. So it's an example of a level 5 type application. So the purpose of these seminars is to be more educational. So I don't want to over rotate on what Elevate's doing, but I want to give you an illustration so you can understand what a Harvey for legal might look like in this area. Whether that's us, there will be others, I'm sure. But it's an example of what to look for, and it gets you to think differently, not just incrementally, but what are the more transformative steps you could take for the business and for your students.
Hey,
So,
Tom,
Tom,
Julie asked a question and wondered if you could share a little bit more about what the AI nailed. So I wonder if you could just describe that with a little bit more depth with this student.
Oh, with the Marcus Chen example.
Yep.
Yeah. So look, I don't want to take too much time, so I'll be brief. I'm happy to do a 30-minute call, or 5 or 10-minute call if you want on this. But the student situation was one where the student was very quiet and was not disclosing much, or on certain topics would disclose stuff, but it was not an obvious situation why the student was behaving the way they were. And I don't want to go into all the parent situations, but there's some parent history and parent behaviors that you could see in the meeting transcripts. You could see the parent behaviors in the transcripts, and you could see the meeting content in the transcripts. And then you could see some of the questions that the way the student answered the question, both behaviorally, how they answered it, and content-wise, how they answered it. And so what Elevated did is they extracted this information on behavioral observations as well as the content for all the people on the calls. And it could assemble a pattern that made sense. Now, Elevated does not say definitively this is what's going on. Elevated is a hypothesis, and that's why we're a tool for advisors. We're not replacing advisors. So we give questions that say, to validate the situation, here's questions you can ask, and here's actions you can take. And when the advisor asked those questions, it validated it. And then the actions ended up being very relevant. And this happened extremely quickly. So that's the situation. I'm not going into some details partly to save time, but also, they're in our example on our website if you want to see them. But I want to be sensitive to any privacy considerations there too. This is all redacted, so it's not an issue, but it takes more time to go unpack that in more detail. Happy to answer other questions, but I'll just touch on a couple of things. What I would say, I know we want to try to get to some more Q&A here. I want to leave you with a couple of thoughts that Elevated with Cyndy been talking about. Look, from the survey, it's clear people want more practical uses of AI, either how to advance the current use of AI or get more comfortable and confident around where the levels people are. And so we are planning to have some additional sessions ahead. They will focus on practical tools for productivity. We're going to have a session, for example, the meeting and communication tools, use of ChatGPT for that, folders, maybe co-work. We'll also have a session on college research and list building. And then, as I mentioned earlier, I think there are a lot of questions, at least there's concerns around ethical and privacy considerations. And I think there's some really practical issues that advisors need to be aware of when they're thinking about their contracts with people, their liabilities, protecting themselves, and then how they work with vendors that we can cover in a session like that. So we'll have more to come on that. And one last statement before we go to Q&A. It's really up to you to decide what you want to do next. We are happy to help you with that. And we're happy to help you in different ways. Here's 4 free steps you can take. One has nothing to do with this, AI. Another is we will set up a news aggregator that looks at the different sources of news that everyone's getting. Jeffrey Neal has pointers to this. Mark Scarlow's out there. There's all sorts of news. So we'll aggregate it and provide it into the key themed topics in easy to digest language. And we'll give you the raw links. So you can go look to the direct articles if you want. It'll be sort of like Google News for AI for college advisors. So we're going to start that in another week or two. So if you're interested, let us know. We'll put you on that list. Thirdly, we are open to doing a 30-minute call with you, having nothing to do with Elevated if that's what you want, just around your current use of AI and what are the opportunities for that. We built an AI business the last year. We use it heavily. We know all the tools. We know not as much as you do about college advising, but enough to be able to help you with that. And we will do that. We'll create up to 20 slots to do that with any of you that are interested. If you're interested, email Buzz at Elevated Environments. I'll give you a QR code in a moment on that. And of course, would be thrilled if any of you want to try Elevated, the tool we've built. You don't have to buy it. You can try it. We want you to try it and like it and love it if you want to use it. But you can do all that at no cost and risk-free. So that's another step you can take if you want. If you book a 30-minute meeting with us, you don't have to. If you don't want to hear anything about that, you can tell us, and we will focus on you and your use of AI if that's what you want to cover. So our intent here is to help you and make it easier for you. In addition to, we've got a product we think can make it really easy for you. So anyway, that's I've moved to sort of our final slide here, just so you've got a QR code you can click on here to get our link if you want it, but our emails are in here, and we'll be doing a follow-up with everyone with the materials, and it'll be available on Cyndy's website. So Cyndy, let me hand it back over to you to sort of handle Q&A here for us.
Well, there's one pressing question that I do want to have a conversation about, but I want you to switch back to a slide because a question's come up about how do you use this and how does it help you make a better college recommendation? And it's this slide here. So understanding the student, understanding your college list, how do those two come together?
So I'm gonna take a brief cut at this right now, but there's a little bit more explanation probably needed. There are a lot of tools out there. What GradBetter's doing with List Hero Pro, for example, they do a great job of taking student data, location, some context about the student and recommending colleges and giving you likelihood of admission, lots of analytics around that. Those tools do a nice job of that, and we generally are not doing that. We're intended to complement that. What our tool is doing, since we know so much about the student and the parent, and by the way, this college list comes about through all the discussions over time. You can go in and manually edit it, but when you talk about a college, that's a data point in our data model, and we store it, and we know what are your discussed colleges, and we know what's your target college list. And so we can look at the student fit, everything you've talked about, their grades, their test scores, their college preferences, the conversations with the parents, their level of anxiety, their degree for being social versus private. And we can look at all that. And right now, we build reports on that. The student fit with the college, for example, a one-page report. It's very impressive in terms of demonstrating advisor knowledge of the student and actually getting the fit right.
Mhm.
Of course, there's the grades and the analytical models you can put with that. We're not doing that right now. Our intent is to complement that, not try to go replace that. Um, but that gives you a little bit more sense of what we do. The example here, and um, this is not the college fit report. You would ask our AI assistant for that and it would generate that. This is just a brief, in our portal, a brief list of what colleges are on the list. And you can see a little commentary of the fit there. It's intended to be just a brief snapshot, but you could open this up and you could enter your own comments, or you could go to the AI assistant on the right. You could say, tell me more about this, or my students interested in more depth on the nursing programs. Tell me more about that. And it'll go look at all the schools and give you a report. You can say, ask me about one, or tell me about all of them. And you can say, give it to me here, or give me a PDF download of a report I can use to give to the parents.
Mhm.
By the way, when it gives it to the parents, it knows, are those parents, what's their style? What's their anxieties? And it will couch it in the context of the student and parents. So it's not just raw data, it's using that holistic data. And that's the power of what the AI can do.
So you're taking something and you're not even having to use a template because it's creating something that's very personalized for that student and those parents. I think that's so powerful. And that's what we try to do. But having a tool to make it and do it more quickly, what in the end, it gives us more time to do what we really want to do, and that's spend more time with students.
yeah, and our so we thought this was really important. The issues people are having with AI, it can make mistakes, it can make problems. So we didn't try to build a tool that's going to go replace an advisor. We can look at this and identify answer all sorts of questions, provide all sorts of insights. As Buzz mentioned, when we look at a meeting, we get hundreds of behavioral observations and thousands of content data points from one meeting for each person, by the way. And over time, we can look at the trends on that. Um, but the power of that is an advisor being able to use that information to then make decisions and work with people. Because you don't know when this stuff may not be perfect. We've built it that way, so we look for the advisor to be able to validate that and use judgment with it. Not to mention that people probably aren't ready for that type of a interface, just in terms of how they work with people.
Mhm.
So we're really a tool that goes behind the advisor to enable that.
Well, which emphasize the fact that our work is not just helping students to fill in applications. Our work is counselors, and it's this human-human connection and building that rapport and building that understanding, that motivation. Whether you're working with neurodivergent students or neurotypical students, it still applies. And I think this is also be very valuable if you're working with neurodivergent students as
Mhm.
well.
Mhm. You can, don't have an example here, but we observe executive functions and the level on that and how that changes over time. And that's not to identify dysfunction, although it's a observational tool to help people
Mhm.
see that. But all students have to build executive function,
Right.
especially if you're working on student development. The earlier and better you do that, that is proven from the educational research to be a foundational differentiator for how students perform later in high school and college and later in life.
Right. Right. So go ahead. You can take the slides down now,
Yeah.
Tom. And the last question I think is a very pertinent question that Jill posted, and I see, Buzz, you've answered it, but it's something we do need to talk about is what about the environmental impacts of AI? We're all reading the stories about AI data centers being built in communities where communities are actually turning them away and saying, not in my hometown, for valid reasons. And so that is another consideration. Where do you see that's something the industry, AI and technology is going to have to grapple with?
Hey, Cindy, maybe I can jump in on this one.
Please,
So there's a
please
couple
do.
different perspectives. Obviously, the processing needs for AI are growing. So as that grows, obviously environmental concerns will grow with that. There's also a strong push in this startup industry that if you're familiar with Y Combinator, they are one of the biggest VC firms. They're funding a lot of environmental focused companies right now to be able to handle this exact problem. So there's a lot of government grants that are coming out to be able to manage this problem. And then there's a lot of startups who actually have a lot of really ambitious people trying to tackle this exact problem. So this is an ongoing conversation as the needs change and grow, but there's a clear focus on being able to solve this problem as it develops as well.
Oh, great. Well, that's very good to hear, Buzz, because it's like anything else. You hear the negative sides, but you don't hear about the positive sides. But we need to hold companies accountable too, for those kinds of things. So,
Yeah.
so as we wrap
Cindy,
up,
I'd just let me just add one other brief comment on that because
okay.
there's the environment. We think about like water use and energy use. There's also the environment of people. And I have big concerns. I don't know how this is going to evolve, but AI is replacing jobs. You see it. These tech companies that are at level 4 and 5, they're the ones having the layoffs now. But I think there's more of that to come. I don't want to be a fear monger, but I see the power of the transformation, and I just can't tell how that's going to play. I know it's going to be highly impactful, but is there going to be more opportunity created because there's capacity created, or is it going to be more detrimental? I think that's really out, and you see this with some of these AI companies talking with the government right now around restricting some of these tools becoming so powerful they need to restrict them in terms of their usage, and people's access to them. So I just think that's something to watch, and I don't have answers on it. I think I share the concern with a lot of people on what that's going to look like.
Yeah, yeah. Well, yes, and that's a very good point. The people part component is very important. Um, Well, so we've covered a lot. I don't see any one last, or let me ask you people, if there's one last burning question, because we're coming up on the end of the hour. I think we've covered a lot. And as you said, this report, the survey report will be available. It'll be available on my website. It'll be available on Elevated Environments, I'm sure. I also want to just make clear, you guys, I am still a just like I love using tools and things that can help my work and my life and what you do better. So I'm not employed or I'm not getting compensated in any way. This is just a topic we wanted to bring to you because I get these questions all the time. And I know better than to do it myself because I always go to the experts. So I have Tom and Buzz here as the experts, and we are going to follow up with some other webinars in the end of May and later on because it's conference season. So be watching for those announcements, plus other things. It looks like I'll be launching my podcast with regular episodes starting around June 1st. So watch for that, and I'll hopefully if you're going to be in Baltimore, I'll see you in a couple of weeks. Please come find me and watch your email for upcoming webinars that we're going to do on these topics as Tom and Buzz have laid out. And I will also be in Chicago at the HECA conference as well. I always love to have people come up and say hello to me. So, anything else you want to say, Tom or Buzz, in closing?
I would definitely say a big thank you to everyone for participating in this survey, providing the qualitative input. and your interest in today's topic. We're going to do our best to try to help you with it, but I think we're all learning on this journey alone. I just appreciate everyone's contribution. Thank you.
Yep, I'll add the same thing. Appreciate everybody's participation on multiple fronts. Thank you all.
Thank you. Thank you. And everybody have a great weekend.